ZamboniFunk. I feel like I should put it on the funk. ZamboniFunk. That's where that should
Fucking
go.
wrong. You know what it is. I thought seriously about spelling it F-O-N-K for a little while.
Funk.
For that funk.
Yeah.
But it's already difficult enough to spell. There's a non-standard capitalization. It's like, it's a mess. So it took me so long to come up with this branding. I've had a terrible go of branding throughout my career. My first band was called Uncle Vernon's Red Mountain Groove Quartet. The next one was Thunderclap Douglas and the 8-track group. It was terrible. It's been terrible after terrible for years.
The first one though does make me think of like a bunch of dudes in those like red flannel pajamas. Do you know what I mean? Like with the red flannel underwear. Yeah. Which is a look. I feel like you could do that. I feel like you could do one show that way.
Sure. Well, so at that point, I wasn't even playing the bass yet. I was singing in a band and with a guitar player who was listening to a lot of Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh yeah.
And so that was the vibe.
Yes.
Like that was where we were, and I was just singing. And actually, I was supposed to be singing backups, and I was a better singer than him, so I like kind of elbowed him out the way and was like, "All right, we're gonna do the thing now."
But now I'm just imagining you guys doing like a cover of like "Don't Fear the Reaper" in those like red flannel pajamas, and it still feels pretty good. I gotta be honest. I think it still works.
Yeah. I'm saying that was the vibe. That was where we were in that moment. We used to listen to a fair amount of Blue Oyster Cult, and we learned some things this way. But now I have arrived on ZamboniFunk, and I've been criticized lots of times for the spelling and for weirdness involved in it. But we remain with
in a
Zamboni.
world where Aleister Crowley changed his fucking name and used to sign the A to Aleister because he thought it was more magical, and then used to sign his name with the A with it literally being a cock and balls. You are nowhere near. I was thinking how like all the Frater Lodge names and stuff is like, I'm Frater Silence is Golden in fucking Latin. Like it's just like so bad as like a wizard thing. I do like Frater Rocker. His works are good. But beyond that, it's like, guys.
I have no idea about any of these tidbits. You come in here and you drop this shit all the time about like lodge magic or Beowulf or some shit like this, and I'm like, okay, if you say so. Was it like that?
It was like that. They all took Latin names. Aleister Crowley's was Frater Perdurabo, which means I will endure. Which was also it was also a dick joke.
Shout out to a motherfucker whose name is still in your mouth right now. So like,
he would have a lot more in my mouth if he was around. So that's how that stuff went down.
Indeed.
Anyway,
yeah. Strong endurance on this guy. I'm not mad.
I'm
Long
saying,
and strong.
Have a comparably powerful SEO. That's what I'm saying. Like
this is true. This is true. If you can figure out how to spell it and put it into the search engine,
it's you.
There's only one ZamboniFunk.
There's only one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how you doing, man? What are things like in the middle of the country? What are you guys up to out there?
I live in America, and so that means that what we are doing in this area is getting money.
For sure.
My seconds, minutes, hours go to the almighty power of the almighty dollar and that chopper.
That one I don't actually know. I'll be honest. I'll admit it. I don't know that one. What's that one?
That's a Lil Wayne lyric from I'm Millie.
Nice. Yeah. And it's correct. It's correct about what it is to be American at all times. It doesn't really matter. Rich, poor, if you're not working for the dollar.
Mm-hmm. The almighty dollar at that.
Oh yeah. It owns us all.
Right. And that's actually what I wanted to talk about today, because I have been, that I've been sort of like wrestling with the idea of economy and sellouts and,
sure.
Like, and all the mess of capitalism / getting money in a magical context.
Yep.
And really, and I'm really working it out now. I'm at a really working it. No, I'm not. I'm lost as ever, but I have a new place where I'm lost at. See, this is one of my main things in life is I just want to make new mistakes. I don't, if
Yeah,
I can just not make the same mistake anymore, then we will call this improvement. I don't have to make fewer mistakes. I have to make different mistakes.
yeah. No, I agree with that actually. I think that's actually a really good standard. I think if people focus, you're throwing it out quickly and you're moving to another thing. But honestly, if you sit with that for a second, like, yeah, just make new mistakes is a pretty good goal, you know, because it means you're
Hmm.
not making the old mistakes.
Right.
You know what I mean? At least, or you are also making the new mistakes.
Right, which is that's an option. My
Yeah,
goal is to not make old mistakes and to only make new mistakes.
right,
And
right. Which means you're
this is
learning.
actually
Yeah,
this is one of my superpowers actually is learning from other people's mistakes. I have an older brother who stepped on a lot of landmines before I got to them. And
right,
so then I just by simply watching the landscape, I got to see where those landmines were. And I was like, okay, well, let me chart a course around here. Doesn't mean I didn't take some explosions in my face from time to time, but I knew where his were and
right,
I could dodge
right.
those ones.
Have I told you about the time I walked through a minefield?
You literally walked through a mine. Well,
Yeah,
you told me that you lived in what was it, Bosnia for a while?
yeah. I was over there doing work after the war with a couple NGOs. It was ostensibly teaching English to kids at like a summer program, but it was actually about like they could talk about their trauma in a second language, and that distanced it. So it was a therapy setup as well.
Mm,
Great
mm.
kids, everything else. But at the end, we had these free days where you were just sort of allowed to wander the countryside, do whatever you want, you know. And so I went on a little hike in this area, not too far from where I was in Zanica, and there was a like sheep track that like you could see it had been muddy and you could see all this like herd of sheep had gone up to this cool looking cave, shepherd's cave up in the hillside, and we had been told not to wander in the countryside because there were a lot of unexploded mines and everything else. And but I was like, sheep made it. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
seems
Uh-huh.
reasonable. You know, like I'm not trying to be in my 19-year-old brain, right? Like I wasn't trying to be an asshole. You know, I was
Uh-huh.
like, I
Uh-huh.
just want to see this cool thing. So I walked up, took a look at the thing, come back down to the absolute shaking white horror of these people who were by the side of the road who were doing this whole like no no like and I'm like, well, I know I walked this way before because of the thing, like if
Right.
I have to get out, that's at least the way I'm gonna go. You know, I can follow my own footprints, you know.
Sure.
So I came back out and this woman was chewing me out in Serbo-Croatian, man, just like up and
Sure.
down, reading me the riot act. And I was just like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't know anything. And the guy spoke English and he stepped in. He goes, did you see the sign? I was like, what sign? And then clear as a bell, right next to where I like hopped the fence, is a sign that says minefield. And 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 I was like, well, I followed the sheep. And he's like, sheep aren't heavy enough to set off the mines.
Oh.
And I had I had a moment where I kind of sat down
Yeah.
and was very grateful to all the angels and spirits who were looking out for me that day, being super dumb and
Uh-huh.
about as American as humanly possible at that moment. And
I was
yeah,
just thinking about that the other day about like times when I've made stupid, dumb ass, terrible decisions
yeah,
that I was just actually that dumb
yeah.
and had a spirit team that was like, look, we're not gonna nuke him today.
No,
Today's not the day. We
it's
got other
not the
plans
day.
for this guy. And so here, we're just gonna let him get through it on this occasion.
My favorite
One
is though when they
time,
let you know that they did it. You know what I mean? Like when you later have
mm,
the realization of how stupid you were, and they're like, "This is what we're
shout out to
talking
me.
about."
Yep, that
Yeah,
that was me that helped you out.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good thing. And actually that's another thing that I had wanted to talk to you about a little bit was this idea of altruism
Hmm.
or because like the best good deeds are the ones where no one knows that you did the thing. You just did the thing, and it improved everything, right? But
Possibly,
then
possibly,
possibly, yeah. Okay,
possibly.
so
Yeah,
let me make my point before you
yeah, yeah,
quibble, because
yeah.
I know that you've got some good quibbles over there. But when I but what one of the things that happens is that you do good deeds that are that help the people out, but no one knows you did good deeds, and so everyone thinks you're a fucking bump on the log and fuck this guy.
Right, right.
And so you earn yourself ill will with the
Right.
people that you're actually helping,
Yeah.
and that sows animosity. So then there's a case for being like, hey, look at me. I'm the greatest. Didn't I do all of this good work? Don't you want to
Right.
pat me on the back? And then I feel weird about this, you know?
So I think there's actually some really good folk wisdom on the best way to middle path this or square this circle, which is our biggest
Sir,
altruistic
I don't
hero.
square circles. Squares are whack and circles are real cool.
You got to get some more boxing in you. You got to square that circle.
Is it a boxing term?
Yeah, it's about like getting out of the corners. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah. The
I still am not about boxes. I would always prefer
we'll circle
circles.
them squares. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The so the stories that I think like hit this most are like Santa Claus, Saint Nick, right? In his original folktale version, Robin Hood, and like Zorro. Okay, so the whole point of these characters is they become mythical. Oh, you could also say Batman, although he does a lot of face punching. Little light on the charity, but the idea of some kind of assumed identity or mask where people probably know who you are, right?
Hmm.
But you haven't made them say thank you to you. Do you know what I mean? You haven't been like,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I think you see this over a lot of like charitable societies over the world create secret societies or something around this where like it's pretty clear who's doing it. We all know, but we're not forced to go through that moment of embarrassment of like having to say thank you to somebody because they gave us charity because we had a bad day. And you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you're sort of
Hmm.
extending some dignity to people while at
Hmm.
the same time you get to do something fun. And even if you are not personally recognized, it's like, oh, you were part of the group dressed up as the three magi, and like you hear everybody be like, yeah, man, the fucking three magi guys are great. And you're like, yeah, one of them three magi guys. Right. So like
Hmm.
it's a way to kind of deal with that problem. Um, and I think it's actually interesting. I think it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, that is an interesting take on it. Sort of give a like a it sort of makes me think about the idea of writing in under the name Hermes Trismegistus or something like this,
Yeah,
right? Like
that's a good
it
example.
wasn't me that had the like the I yes I was
Right.
involved, but like it's not really about me. It's like there's this other separate entity who you should really be paying attention to, and I'm a lowly servant of the thing, right?
Right. Right. I
And
was listening. Yeah, Christian Rosenkreuz. The whole Rosicrucian thing is based on that. Yeah.
sure, sure. And this sort of like gets into the question of intellectual property that
Good question.
I that I think is in deep question in this moment as we lean into a digital world and AI and all
Yeah.
the rest of that. We're in a moment where none of the intellectual property stuff makes any sense.
Right.
Like it never made any sense.
No.
Like the idea that like Sony was going to own Prince's songs or something like this, like
Yeah.
is an absurd idea in the first place. But then even the idea that like Prince is going to own a song, like what are you talking about? How are you going
Right.
to own a song? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like make somebody pay for it every time that they want to like cover the song or something like that. Like it was ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
I've actually lost out on gigs before as a musician, like just like trying to play in this or that spot because you can't play any covers in the spot because then the venue has to pay to
Right.
BMI or something like that. And so, what are we, what are
What are
we
we
doing?
doing?
Why?
Yeah.
Right? And so, and so there's a, and I understand why intellectual property would be a thing because then if you are an artist or a musician, if you want to be Prince and you want to pay for your life while you are
Yeah.
doing all of it, like Prince cannot have a 9 to 5 and also do all of the Prince things. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's not how we
No.
get Prince, right? Prince needs to be able to pay for his lifestyle, for his wild ass Carmen Electra lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like that
Yes.
shit. If we want Prince, we need all the
We need
rest of that,
this. It's true.
right?
Yeah.
And
One
so
does not
like
arise without the other.
exactly. And so so I understand why intellectual property would need to be paid for in this kind of thing if we're going to live in a market society, which like is a whole other thing. But like, so, but it reaches a ridiculous place,
Mhm.
especially once we get robots involved, because robots have no idea what's going on. You know,
No.
like
No, they really don't.
I've leveraged the complaint for a long time that I can't really use ZamboniFunk music on my podcasts because the robots consider it a copyright claim,
Right.
and it says that I'm claiming a copyright fraud against myself. But it's my fucking music. The reason I made this goddamn music was is so that I could do whatever the fuck I want with it. And so
Yeah.
it just like turns into this whole debacle. And then so there's that, but then there's the idea of like citation as well,
Sure. Yep.
right? Like the idea that someone else had the idea before I did. And
Hmm.
so on the one hand, there is intellectual rigor associated with citation.
Right.
And on the other hand, there's a certain sense of like, if you haven't exhaustively researched everything, all the words that have ever been written, and
Right.
then you are always at risk of plagiarism.
Right.
And so it like so there's it's dangerous landscape that doesn't make any sense and is at a sort of a sort of breaking point that makes me think that writing under the name Hermes Trismegistus might actually be a bit of a solve for this.
Yes. So there's a lot in there to sort of pull at. Um, but I do think that so as someone who wrote a book of magic poems,
Mm-hmm.
which I consider to be co-written by the spirits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even expressed through almost in the same way that we talk about using, I can only express certain ideas in English because that's my language. That's what I have to do. These spirits kind of used me as their language to express things.
Mm.
And every line in that book of poems is mine. If it's not, I quoted it. But like you know what I mean? But like it's my stuff. But it's also entirely dependent on that collaboration. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It does not exist without that. And I talk about that in the intro to the book because I want people to know that this is a collaborative work with those spirits. And so if you were to say, strictly speaking, in court, unfortunately, I don't think the deckhand spirits are counted as persons by the
Mm-hmm.
U.S. Supreme
Mm-hmm.
Court. But like
Yeah,
we do
neither are
have
rivers or
right,
mountains.
right. But we do have obligations there, right? And I think that if
Mm-hmm.
I began saying, no, I wrote it all, it's all my idea, I have no connection to these things, there would be reciprocity there, right? There would be cost to doing so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because what we're getting at is that this it's almost like the original Gnostic sin, right? To be like, I alone did this,
Mm-hmm.
I created this
Mm-hmm.
out of nothing. And citation is one way to say, hey, this is what I looked at. These are some people who helped me out, and maybe these
Mm-hmm.
are some other ideas. Like bibliography is useful, right? Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
these are some other
Mm-hmm.
people you should read. But when it strays away from this is the lineage of my thought. These are the people I'm paying my respects to,
Mm-hmm.
and strays into, ooh, you fake plagiarized, now you're going to jail. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
lose something important about that dynamic. And you're right, the robots don't give a fuck. The robots do not understand this at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think because I'm mostly in favor of the idea that the old way of thinking about art is going to have to change, right? Like I'm in favor of this thing. The one thing that concerns me is making sure we are authentic in what our in sharing our source material. But I think there's also been a real lie about this for a long time in American culture anyway. So like when we talk about The Godfather, right, just as a film for a second, an auteur theory, we're like, yeah, Francis Ford Coppola made that film. Like, no, he fucking did not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he did, but also he had so much goddamn help to make that. And it's a lie to say this is his vision alone. It's
Mm-hmm.
not.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so this single authorship model
Mm-hmm.
is kind of a toxic model. And you see it in the sciences a lot too, where like the grad students will work like dogs and they'll be figuring stuff out and they'll be suggesting ideas. And it really is the lab. The lab as a whole
Mm-hmm.
creates this experiment and creates these ideas, but it's only the primary researcher who gets the credit a lot of times. Like it's, in fact, I know people who were advised against giving their younger students credit in papers because it would make them look weak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the person in question was like, I'm going to do that because they actually contributed. You know what I mean? Like this is better. But so that older single authorship model is
Mm-hmm.
part of the problem of the intellectual property conversation in start with, right?
Right. Yeah, and that example really feels like so downstream of the Enlightenment,
Yes.
right? The
Yeah.
and which is it's not exactly coincidental with the Copernican revolution. There's about
Right.
200 years between them, but that's a moment in time, right?
Right.
And so when I think about Copernicus, one of the things about Copernicus is so Copernicus is responsible for the idea is understood to be responsible for the idea that of heliocentricity, right? The
Right.
sun is at the center, not the Earth at the center, right? And so then that then sort of like creates a model of the universe wherein people are not at the middle, are not at
Right.
the center of things. And then that goes on to lead to a crisis in meaning. Like, oh,
Right.
so if I'm not the main shit that's going on, then maybe none of what goes on here matters at all. And if none of what goes on here matters at all, then maybe and then we just like sort of like float away into outer space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Although
yeah, hit it.
it's interesting because that itself is it's a two-step separation, right? Because, we had older societies where we understood that we had a reciprocity relationship to each other, that like I myself am not, and humans may not be the center of the universe. It might be me and the gods. It might be me and this grove of old trees, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a post-Christian moment where you have a
Mm-hmm.
monotheistic viewpoint where like we are the special creatures of God who is like unto us. And then you have the heliocentric thing after that. So it's actually like two steps removed already from, and they could have kind of gone back and been like, yeah, no, we're all orbiting in this, we're all working around. I always thought it was funny that they were like, this disproves God to say that the earth orbits the sun, and I'm like, why wouldn't the sun, this is the Giordano Bruno thing, right? Like, why isn't the sun like God and the rest of us kind of orbit around him? They're like, onto
Mm-hmm.
the fire with you, asshole,
Sure.
but yeah, so but we're two steps removed from that relating, at least two from that relating worldview by the time we get to, are we just going to drift into nothingness?
Right, right. Okay, so where I'm going here with this is so Copernicus gets us to this place where there's a crisis of meaning
Right.
that underlies everything. Also, coincidentally, the transatlantic slave trade starts in that same moment. So,
Not Yeah.
You can feel about that however
Right.
you want to.
Coincidentally. Yes.
Right. Coincidentally, meaning at the same time.
Yes,
Two
exactly.
incidences same, right?
Yeah. Who's to say? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Feel however you want to feel about that.
Yeah.
But so there's this crisis of meaning that then turns into, okay, I'm going to make my own meaning.
Right.
I as an individual can make the rules. I can do whatever I want because it's just me that matters. And so then that turns into individual authorship. So
Right.
no longer am I willing to attribute the work that I contributed, that I wrote, to a God form.
Right.
Now, because that God form has been maybe not disproven entirely, but like it isn't what everybody thought it was, right?
Yeah.
And so if I am the only thing that can make my own meaning, then I guess I'm the one who did all the stuff. And then we get sort of like rational science all of
Right.
rational science is downstream from that.
Right. The God form thing, when you just said that, got me really excited. Again, there's a whole bunch of stuff here, but I've been trying to explain. I'm staying down with family, and my brother-in-law, who I love very dearly, is of an atheistic mindset. Right, that's his jam. And so we were having a conversation about spirit, and I was trying to talk to him about this Rune Rasmussen video I saw about like what even am Frere. You know what I mean? What does it mean to be the god Frere? What is that? Right.
Okay.
And to summarize that very quickly, once you have the conditions that create peaceful, good kingship, Frere arises. Right? Frere
Mm-hmm.
is the spirit that comes from all these things being in place. And then and
Mm-hmm.
you feel it. You know it's there. It's tangible, and it will affect you and change your life and do all these other things. And seeking Frere will cause you to act in certain ways. You know, these are living beings in that way, but they also are contingent on these different things arising.
Mm-hmm.
And what you just said about like writing to be, to be Hermes Trismegistus, right? To have
Mm-hmm.
where everyone else looks at what you wrote and they're like, yeah, that is thrice great Hermes. Like, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
You brought that spirit in
Mm-hmm.
enough. Like, that's almost it's a really beautiful thing to be like, to
Mm-hmm.
know for yourself that like, oh, I wrote something good enough to be this spirit for real, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, and yes, it is less about your personal ego, but it is very, that kind of high you chase as an artist of like, I accomplished something. Like I
Mm-hmm.
made it good enough that people couldn't say it was bad. Like they fucking loved it, You
Mm-hmm.
still
Mm-hmm.
get that there in a very beautiful way. Yeah, that's really cool. Because you can fuck it up. If you wrote something that wasn't Hermes, they're gonna be like,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's pseudo Hermes. You're like, I don't want to be no fucking pseudo Hermes.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that becomes a mess of its own because it's like so the way you get good enough to write in Hermes' voice is by doing shit all the time, and you do
Yeah,
if you so this means that you don't have a 9 to 5. So like
no,
so then all right, so how are we paying the bills this way? You know what I
right,
mean? Like,
yep,
and that's all that like is underlying all of the work that can be done right now in 2024. Always there has to be a certain mindset of how is the bill going to get paid. Currently, when I do my artwork, I do other work and then
yep,
pay for that, right? The
yep,
art doesn't pay me, I pay for the art.
same,
And
yeah,
that's the only way that I can make sure that like I can have my heart in the spot where it goes because okay, now we can arrive back to I have this fear of selling out, right? I have this
right,
fear of the marketplace. And so I've discussed that here lots of times. We asked Natalia about it, and like
yep,
there was I don't know about it yet. So recently, I have been thinking about the idea of systems and gaming the system, most
sure,
importantly.
sure,
So if we think about gaming a system, anytime there's a system that has a certain set of outcomes that you want, then there are rules to get that outcome, and then the incentive becomes to do whatever it takes to get that outcome.
Right.
And so when we're in a market environment where, okay, so the economy is the allocation of scarce resources which have alternative uses, right? And so resources could be used for whatever thing, and I want those resources to be used on me and what I want them to be used for, right?
Right.
And like my instruments and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
So in order for that to happen, then I have to make sure that I have a product or service that I can sell to the market that then that people will buy, right?
Right.
And
That
so
fulfills the value set of the market. Yeah.
that fulfills the value set of the market. Yes, correct. And so I am going to define value now, right? So value, the idea of value is you use resources, time, energy, attention, money, whatever else on this thing and not on the other thing. Value
Right.
is measured against all opportunity cost, right?
Right. Right.
And so the point of the marketplace is to decide what has value and what we're going to spend the resources on, what we're going to like actually
Sure.
try to make happen, and what is going to be neglected as a result of our paying attention and resource to this thing, right? And
Sure.
so that's a system that has a certain set of rules and that can be gamed.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, there's a certain sense of it must be gamed in order to get the return on the investment that the economic return on the investment.
Sure. Yeah.
So market value is different from things that are actually useful,
Yes.
right? So it's about to be the 4th of July here. And think about an ear of corn, right? It's grilled up nice, got the little butter on there. You know what I mean? Handle your little
Real
salt
good.
and pepper
Real
business, whatever it is that you like to do. I
Yeah.
love me some corn on the cob, right? So a cob of corn, it's going to be what, like 70 cents in the marketplace or something like this.
Give or take. Yeah. Yeah.
But at no point am I eating 3/4, right?
You could try.
Yeah, you could try. You might make it through one. You know what I mean? Dude,
It's not corn. I
it's
see your
not
point.
corn.
Quarters are not
Yeah.
corn. Yeah.
And so there's a kind of value that is inherent in like you chomp the corn and then you get a feeling from that the economic marketplace can't touch. And so
Sure.
there's something about creating something that is useful, delicious, that creates a feeling
Right.
that has a Venn diagram overlap with what is valuable in the marketplace. But much of what is valuable in the marketplace does not create the good feeling, but is still valuable in the marketplace, and so is the thing that a lot of people are going to go for and produce and whatever else. So
There's been some really interesting work here with like environmentalism stuff where people are trying to assign values to the experiences, the ability to go into the woods, right? What is the value of that, right? But and the argument being, if you're going to work inside a market-driven system, these things need to have input values assigned to them so that they can play in the system, right? So, where a government might look at the value of a new factory versus the value of an old growth forest. And right now it's like, well, the old growth forest doesn't produce a product. It literally anti-produces a product. It stays where it is. And so there is no value in a product or commodity driven marketplace. But that's not the only way we can define value by commodity. We can also define value by experience, right? But we have to find a translation point for that to be able to to be able to compete against quarters. So like how much is the value of sitting in the forest? Like how much are you willing to pay for that? Right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Becomes the translation of value, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And to some degree the answer is, well, I certainly pay what the national parks will charge me, right?
Hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? And so anyway, but just saying that like it is interesting that we're at a point where a lot of people are starting to really ask this question of like, does value have to be tied to commodity, or can value be approximated to experience?
Sure. Well, I feel like we always have to, whenever we're thinking of with value definitions, we always have to come back to value is measured against opportunity cost.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so what you're willing to pay for the opportunity to sit in the old growth forest is not the dollar amount that you're willing to give up on entry of the old growth
No,
forest.
no, it's more than that.
It
Yeah.
it is the thing that you're willing to forego
Right.
in place of the old growth forest.
Right.
And,
So in this case, if I am willing to forego a factory
mhm,
because I like or let's say the factory costs $500,000 to make, just for shits and giggles.
sure,
If I'm like, no, it matters more to me to sit in the forest. The value of the forest is at minimum $500,000
sure. Well,
because it
that's
shows value.
if the factory is going to make $500,000.
Sure, let's say that it's going to produce net revenue, net profit, five
Uh-huh.
hundred thousand dollars. And I'm
Sure.
like, no thanks. I'd rather sit in the forest. Then the
Right.
forest has a minimum value of $500,000.
Sure. Well, so the thing about this, though, is that opportunity cost is necessarily nebulous. There's no
Yeah,
way to know how much the factory is going to be worth. There's no way to know
right.
what you give up, what kind of opportunities you give up by playing on your phone in your living room instead of getting out into the world and adventuring, right? There's
A
no
lot.
way to measure. Right. Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot. How much is a lot, you know?
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah. So you're always measuring against opportunity rather than a certain the difference between price and cost is an important one,
Right,
right? The
right,
price of the thing is not it the hopefully the price reflects the cost,
right, right.
but there's often a mismatch, especially when the cost is opportunity, because there's no way to know what opportunity, like opportunity is so in the realm of fortune.
Right.
Like it is inexplicable in that way, in that sort of like, oh, like, well, anything can happen kind of way, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So the as an artist or artisan or as a craftsperson or as a broke ass who's trying to make it in the market in 2024, right? Like
Right.
somebody who doesn't want to work their fucking job anymore and who needs to be able to pay bills. Like you need to be able to sell something that is valuable in the marketplace, right?
Right.
So that's the angle that I'm sort of like trying to come at this with. And so we get to this point where it's like, okay, because I think a lot of the fear of selling out comes from the sense that gaming the system is immoral
Hmm.
because it speaks only to market value and
Right.
not to opportunity. And because it games the system and that is understood as cheating, there like in a felt sense kind of way,
Yeah, it sort
then
of undercuts the project we're all trying to work on together here of opportunity cost of understanding the opportunity cost of like it's kind of saying I'm ignoring that. I'm just gonna
uh-huh, and ignoring the idea of making the world a better place for the children
right,
and
right.
and the generations that come after, right? Which is widely understood as like the broad human project. We're all trying to make the world better for our children.
So I have an example of gaming the system. that I
Okay.
think might be interesting. So one of my favorite magicians, like in the terms of like sleight of hand and mentalism, this kind of stuff, is Darren
Okay. Okay.
Brown.
Okay.
And Darren Brown did a thing where he did a lot of stuff on TV where the stuff he did was sort of like in between social experiments, stage magic, and kind of televised pranks or hoaxes, right? They kind of
Hmm.
existed in the middle. And like a good magician, he's very good at showmanship. So he built these different experiences for you. But one of his early ones was a racetrack experiment. And what he said was he's going to take somebody, he's going to train him how to do a magic trick where he convinces the person to let him. Well, no, so I'm going to back up. He convinced the person they have a system for how to select a winner. Okay, at the
Hmm.
racetrack every time,
Okay.
and that the person who's his confederate, he can't go and do it because people know he's a magician. So he's gotten this guy off the street to go and place the bets,
Uh-huh.
right? And he does some cool stuff with this. I mean, he's a really good magician. So he does a trick he calls paying with paper, which is a sort of hypnosis trick where you basically convince people to let you pay for something with paper instead of money.
Huh.
And he places horse racing bets with this and gets it back. That part's real. You can do that to people. It's really it's a weird thing. So he does some of these magic tricks along the way. You start to think maybe he has a system, and I think it was like 4 episodes, 3 episodes. You go through and you trace this guy's life. You find all about the patsy he's gotten for this. There's some feeling that maybe this patsy is being taken advantage of in some way by Darren Brown along the way, but he wins every time. Okay, they track him all the way up. He wins the final, and he's now against all the odds won 10 horse races in a row.
Uh-huh.
And then Darren Brown shows you how he did it, which is they looked at the odds of how if they covered the field, how many people would they have to track with cameras in order
Uh,
to find one that statistically would go all the way through. And so he shows you all the faces of the like 700 or 800 other people they
huh.
filmed. And they
Uh-huh.
just stopped whenever they had a loser. And they finally got one
Sure.
story. And then they edited it all together. And people lost their shit about this because they said it wasn't a magic trick.
Huh. Uh-huh. Sure.
It was just
That's the
TV
best magic
bullshit.
trick.
Right. But it was a magic trick, right? But it's the same thing. They gamed the system, right, in order to
Hmm.
get the outcome. It wasn't, and stage magicians are always gaming the system in some way, right?
Sure.
Um, but so that's an
Yeah.
example of like
Okay, so
cheating, right?
yeah. So um okay, I do like this example
Yeah,
because my immediate reaction to that was, oh well, that obviously was a really good magic trick, right?
right, right,
Because you got what you wanted, right? And that's
yes,
really what magic is.
right.
The magic is the power to get the thing that you want.
It might be even better real magic than it is stage magic. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. So, but there was wide public outrage, right? The
yes,
the
yes,
first thing that you feel on finding out that like it feels like a hoax. It feels like, oh,
right,
I've been had, you know? And so that I think is the feeling that is associated with gaming the system and
yes,
therefore selling out, right? Of
right,
a sense of like, oh, I've been had and this isn't the real deal, and we're not cooperating on this broader human project that could be so beautiful. We could live in the
right,
more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, but these motherfuckers are gaming the system, and
yes,
so I can't live this way. So I think that is the fear that holds me and other people back from succeeding as strongly in the marketplace as could otherwise be possible.
sure.
So
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
that then brings me back to what I said, which was, oh, this is actually a very good magic trick.
Right.
And so, like, maybe, and right, so it's important for us to remember that magic is frequently associated with Mercury or Thoth or a trickster figure, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and this speaks to something that I've been talking about a lot recently, which is piracy, which is the sense that there's one rule in piracy, which is can you do the thing or can you not do the thing, right?
Right.
And so if you can do the thing, I didn't say is the thing legal or is it illegal. I said
Right.
like is it within bounds or is it not within? No, 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 no. That's not what it. Can it be done or can it
Right.
not be done, right? And if
Right.
it can be done, then the thing is in play, and maybe you should be aware, at least be aware of that. But maybe you should go and do the thing that it
You
takes.
might should do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you might should do it. So magic is morally agnostic on
Yes.
that.
Yes. Um, I love, by the way, piracy, one of my favorite things to talk about. I fucking love piracy. Sam Bellamy is a king.
Mm,
Um, the and I grew up in pirate country. Like I grew up in Virginia. I grew up hearing all about like Blackbeard and like this stuff was real.
hmm
But if people haven't seen the show Black Sails, you
hmm
should watch the show Black Sails.
hmm
Um, uh, Bisexual anarchy pirates based on the actual Tortuga pirate, uh, kingdom, if country,
hmm
um, that also weaves in the fictional characters from Treasure Island.
hmm
So it follows like Captain Flint on his revenge mission to destroy the British Empire because of a slight that they did to
hmm
him. So like he wants freedom, but what he really wants is to punish the entire British Empire. And how can I
hmm
can a man in a ship
hmm
destroy an empire? And he says yes, and this is how, right? And
hmm
so that there's a romance and
hmm
to the if it can be done, I might should do it. Do you know what I mean?
hmm
Like particularly when it comes to freedom and flourishing and looking at these systems that are rigged. The
hmm
monarchy is a rigged fucking system. Not even just you're not even gaming in that point, right? It's rigged. It's a like you
Sure. Well,
can't
that is
win.
the that right. That I mean, that's the game from that
Right.
perspective.
Right. That's the casino, right?
Uh-huh. Exactly.
And as another point, Americans love heist movies. We
Sure.
love robbing the casino, you
Uh-huh.
know, but we definitely love it if you do it in a clever way. Like if you Hermes
Sure.
rob the casino, it's not as interesting if you just blow it up with a tank and then like pull stuff out. That's you know we want you to run a con. We want you to trick the people. We want that Hermes to be
hmm
present in how we do it. And pirates are arguably the like Mars Hermes. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like combo going on.
Oh, indeed. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of overlap between Mars and Mercury in the first place,
Totally.
right?
I mean, I love Hermes as god of wrestlers and boxers.
Yeah, I was just about
Uh,
to go there.
that's my
Uh-huh.
favorite
Seems
because
like an arena where it's like dudes sweating it out, right? Like it seems like it's very
only the
Mars up in
toughest
here.
man will live. And you're like, no, no, it's the smartest motherfucker will do it. The guy who figures out the next leg kick that nobody can block. The
hmm
guy, that's the
hmm
real winner is Hermes.
And also, Mercury's job in lots of cases is usurp,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is
That's a good point.
not that's not exactly a Mars move, right?
No.
Mars is shoot 'em up,
Yeah.
whereas Mercury is like I'm gonna invert things.
Yeah.
I'm gonna flip it around. We're gonna like approach from a direction that you never saw coming, or something like this, right? And
Yeah.
so when I think about wrestling, like that's the like flip it over is the wave there, right?
Yeah. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of the most
hmm
Mercury arts that has ever existed.
hmm
Literally fighting on your back, you're winning on the ground. Like the moment when the
Right.
other person thinks they're pounding you into dust, you're slowly choking them out the whole time, right? Like that's that game.
hmm
Um, and people complained that they were cheating. Like when they first came in, like people forget, like BJJ, everybody was like, "This is bullshit. This isn't real fighting. This is cheating. This is some nonsense."
hmm
Because I was actually in martial arts when that happened. I got to train with some of the early. I actually got a weird seminar with one of the Gracie brothers
mm
early on,
mm
and you know, which is a story I'll tell some other time. But the general outcry from the martial arts community at the time was like, "This is bullshit." right?
Mm.
This
Mm-hmm.
is unfair, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And some of it was they were pretty shady too, but like so is every boxing promoter that's ever existed, right? Like it's it's a shady thing.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, like, who's winning?
yeah, right. And who changed the game? And to your inversion thing. So here's something I'm interested in
Sure.
with this entire conversation, with piracy, with Mercury, all this, is like there's gaming the system,
Mm-hmm.
which is one way to Mercury your way through something. But then there's also working in a different system. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So like inside every system, there are possibilities of other systems. There's layers to everything.
Hmm.
And if you're playing one game
Mm-hmm.
and you think I'm playing your game, but I'm actually playing another game,
Hmm.
I can gain a lot of advantages
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
really
Hmm.
fast. And I can actually, over time, change the meta, right? Change the game.
Hmm.
And so, like in mixed martial arts, for example, started out just some heavy, bruising motherfuckers who could throw some right hands. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu comes in, changes the meta, but then people start getting good at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, right? And so the
Hmm.
game then changes again, and like the wrestlers get really good because they can take them down before they do this sort of stuff and dominate, right? And then the Thai kickboxers get really good because they learn to sprawl a little bit and stay away from the
Hmm.
takedowns, and nobody likes getting kicked by that shit, right? So like the meta changes every couple years as different
Hmm.
people develop ways to change the game. And at some point, the game no longer looks like how it started,
Hmm.
right? And so how do you feel in terms of like economy and arts? Where do we differentiate, or do we, between gaming the system and changing this or usurping the system, right, into a new
Hmm.
game?
Sure. So already we've been talking for 45 minutes, and I haven't mentioned Ursula Le Guin yet. So
It's time. Get the drinks.
it's
Get the
time.
drinks.
It's time to do that. Ursula Le Guin, of course, teaches that how you play is what you win, right?
Yep.
And so that there's great wisdom to be had there around playing a different game and
Mhm.
therefore winning at it in a different way.
Yeah.
And so there's always something to be had there,
Yeah.
right? And I the that wisdom is very far reaching and ongoing. I don't know that it gets you paid. It counsels in the way that I have experienced it, it counsels against wanting to get so paid. Because like it's this sort
Yes.
of like
Yeah.
time over money argument, right? It's like
Right.
it's better to be broke with plenty of time to like sit in the forest and think thoughts than it is to like race all the time and go and run and
Sure.
be sweating about the bosses and all the rest of this and have money but have no time to spend it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there is that argument all the time, and that's not going anywhere. I personally run into this. What is this face you're making?
Oh no, the cops came by, right? Like you were
Uh
like
huh.
talking about something else. There's like a big set of cops
Sure.
coming up. It's like,
Yeah, see
nope,
those blue
not
lights
playing
go
that.
by. I'd be like,
Yeah, we're not playing that game right now. Yeah, that's the
right. Nothing to see here, officer.
yeah.
Where I run into it is, like, so there, it is commonly understood in the hip hop game that the best rapper is not the one who gets the deal. The one who gets the
Sure.
deal is the one who plays the game, is the one who like does all of the marketing shit and handles business and
Mhm.
and does all of that stuff. And so shout out to Drake, right? And
Yeah.
so it's true that Drake did just get crushed by Kendrick Lamar and all this, right? Right? Well, don't necessarily need to talk about that because Drake
Right.
fans are still fucking Drake fans. Drake is
Yep.
laughing all the way to the bank, like
Yep.
it's the like. So, and this is true at every level. You know what I mean? If you're willing to go and do the thing that it takes to go get people at your shows or whatever, you know, and that might include playing a style of music that you don't really super feel, but like people love hearing these CCR
Right.
tunes, and so like we're gonna do that shit, and
Yeah.
you know, like that kind of thing. So that is what I would think of as playing the game, or I and like there, I guess there's like an ethical feeling that I'm
Sure.
like I'm not, you know, like cuz I want to create a product that I can put Hermes Trismegistus on.
Yeah.
The name Hermes, you know what I mean? Like I want to
Yep.
be able to put that stamp on it. And because I want that stamp more than I want Leonardo DiCaprio money,
Right.
I am going to prioritize that thing rather
Yeah.
than you know, because like there's a certain kind of formula to doing the Will Smith thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just like
Yep.
if I just do it and I go harder than anyone else has ever gone and like do the things that you're supposed to do, then like there's money to be made here, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so, but I find that I'm not willing to do that. Maybe because I'm lazy. Strong possibility of that. You know, I'm like big on the time over money thing, right? Like
Sure.
I wanna chill and just like look at shit. Um, but I find that there's a certain moral hang up that I have that
Hmm.
I'm not sure how to get around that. If I should get around that.
I so I'm in a I'm in a spot with this conversation that I never planned to be in exactly, in that I think I am selling out less than I thought I might over time, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm working, my art is much more in the Hermes Trismegistus line.
Mm-hmm.
It makes more money than my contemporaries do on their art who are playing the game,
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it's also never going to support me. It's not going to happen. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm cool with that. And I work a day job that is very business. Is, you know what I mean? Like it's not corporate because it's for a startup, for a small company,
Mm-hmm.
but it is, you know, I'm dealing with, you know, big name corporate folks all the time, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I wonder if, like, there's a point in time where I think maybe in like grad school, for example, where part of me would have thought you're selling out by not devoting all your time to
Mm-hmm.
poetry,
Mm-hmm.
right? But in order to make a living with poetry, the way this is set up right now, first off, I would have to spend a lot of my time teaching
Mm-hmm.
primarily. So I wouldn't be able to do that. But then also, like, I would have to produce poetry that enough people want to buy to pay for
Mm-hmm.
all the things. So I would
Mm-hmm.
that would actually engage me in more of a process of selling out than having
Mm-hmm.
this separate day job would like to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna take a little run from this for a second, which is I've become really interested in what in a sort of 80-20 rule conversation, and like how, which has a couple different interpretations, but basically, you know, the first 80% of what you need takes 20% of the effort. The last 20% takes 80% of the effort. You know, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that, like, for a lot of things, maybe I just really need to be 80% good at it
Right.
and stop worrying. Right?
Sure.
Not the poetry, not the magic. Those I need to be great at.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But for what I'm making my money at, it's not that I need to do the minimum, because the minimum sometimes gets in the way too. Right? The
Mm-hmm.
minimum isn't enough
Mm-hmm.
to solve this stuff. But also maybe I don't need to devote all of my, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
like let that last 20% kind of run off. I can be good enough, right, at
Sure.
this. and I don't mean good enough in the sense of like not actually being very, very good at what I do.
Uh-huh.
So for example, let's take Silicon Valley kind of types for a second, right? It's probably better to have a vision, want to achieve it, you know what I mean, do all this kind of stuff, work, whatever it is. But in terms of the money aspect, the like, how do I
Mm,
pay my bills part, to not be top 10 in Silicon Valley, but be top 50,
mm, mm,
you know, because the extra work it takes to become top 10 is going to
right.
cut out your vision and
Sure.
take you away from this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay to want
Mm-hmm.
to be top 50. Do you know what I mean? It's okay to work hard at a craft to get you there, but not so much that the opportunity cost, right? It starts
Mm,
eating
mm-hmm.
everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, you tell me about musicians for a second, but like, who would you say is a musician you can think of to respect, right? Somebody who does their craft and is not selling all the albums, you know, they're not top of the charts, they're not doing this, but they tour. Do you know what I mean? Like they're like
Sure.
they maybe they got a tour all the time. Maybe they never stopped touring. Maybe that's, you know, maybe that's a problem on its own, right?
Right. Right.
But they make money. They're in the money making part of this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but they don't make too much money. Right? There's a point where like you make too much money, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 For sure. That's really interesting. Okay, so disregarding your question about an example for a minute, I do want
Sure.
to take a moment to recognize that um, the insight that you just dropped is right on time. So currently, the as of filming this conversation,
Yeah.
the moon is in Gemini,
Mm.
along with Jupiter, who is in the first decan of Gemini. And so that is a placement that is frequently associated with a jack of all trades sort of
Sure.
situation. Like people who have Jupiter in the first decan of Gemini are frequently multi-talented and
Right.
can have a certain amount of facility at a lot of different things. And so that it's the idea of like getting up to 80% is like kind of easy for these
Right.
folks.
Right. Right.
And that can actually sometimes turn into like a kind of paralysis. It's good to remember that Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini, right?
Right.
Jupiter is not quite as good at being like, huzzah, let's go do the
Right.
thing, right? Like there's a kind of like, you can think about the Eight of Swords in the
Mm.
Rider Waite Smith, right? She's like tied up and
Yeah.
like can't move, but she's like got this gown on, but like also can't move, right? So there's
Yeah.
a kind of paralysis that comes with that. So just this idea of like you can be top 50, but you got to be good at a lot of different shit,
Yeah.
and it's worth getting to 80% in many different fields is big Jupiter and Gemini wisdom.
Right.
So
Right.
that is just hilarious that is the thing that we're talking about right
Well,
now.
that listen, they want to speak through, right? So they're,
Uh
you
huh.
know what I mean? Yeah, we're co-creating. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a good job. We're on
Yeah.
time right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's what's up here. I um I don't know where you were necessarily going with the example thing. I don't know that I necessarily do have an example of because I don't really feel like I am paying attention to
Sure.
musicians as like entities right now. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I put on the music and then listen to whatever I listen to, and then like are they touring? Like I'm not going to a show
Right. Right.
probably.
Right.
They're not coming through my town, like it's fine. Don't
Yeah. I always, well, let me throw one up then as kind of an example. So I always liked, and sometimes, yeah, I'll just say it this way. I always liked Amanda Palmer, who was in the Dresden Dolls, right? And she did
Okay.
this whole thing about the art of asking, you know, and like, you know, getting her
Sure.
fan. She was one of the people who kind of cracked some of the crowdsourcing, you know, get your fans, get 5,000
Right,
loyal
right.
fans,
Yes, I
that kind
remember
of thing.
this. Hmm.
Yeah. But what I like for this conversation is like she's in the news. She's making art that she wants. She decides she's going to quit for a bit and just hang out with her kid and not do stuff for 2 years. Then she's going to make something come back. But she does interviews. She connects to her fans. She plays a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's very honest and straightforward about like, this is how I make my money. These are the people who are giving it to me. I accept certain restrictions in order to do it this way, but I also very much am about getting paid and doing
Mm-hmm.
gigs to get paid, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not, she's a working musician in that sense, right?
Sure.
So, but her stuff is niche. Not everybody likes it. She gets a lot of shit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And she's never going to be the number one Billboard hit. She's never going to have a pop song that breaks across the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not going to happen. She had some things that were up there, you know,
Sure.
but that's not. But it's also not necessarily. She's been very clear. She wanted to be famous. It's not just the art. She wants to be known. She wants to have the opportunities that fame provides.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
she's not willing to go so far that she's just making the things, or she's even maybe
Right.
unable in some ways to do it. Right? Maybe she can't play the game.
Yeah. I run into that trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, so whenever we have this conversation, we sort of end up in this rut that we're in right now.
Okay.
We end up here all the time, and so I want to go back a little bit, and I want to think about the nature of the system at large.
Sure.
And so, one of the okay, I don't know that I have this fleshed out in such a way that it's going to come out and end in a clear question. But rock with me for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, one of the best ways to make money, in fact, the only way that the super mega rich make money, but then also the kind of thing that I am trying to do is moving into passive income.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
And so passive income is this idea of I once created something valuable, or I at least once owned access to something valuable.
Right.
And I have the power to bottleneck things so that you can't get the thing without paying the toll. And I don't have to worry about continuing to create any kind of value because I have this thing that is/was valuable, and you have to pay the toll to get across.
Right.
So this is the concept of rent seeking,
Yes.
which is extremely important when we start to think about ideas around power dynamics, right? And so if we think of power, one of my favorite definitions of power is the ability to allocate scarce resources which have alternative uses, right? So power is exists in this space where we've got scarce resources and then the powerful decide where stuff goes, right? And this happens on the basis of rent seeking, on the basis of ownership of things that are valuable that then you have to continue to pay rent on all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And so the idea of seeking rent feels like gaming the system.
Yes. Yeah.
I mentioned that the super mega rich and powerful are engaged in almost entirely in that.
Yes.
And I think that is gross and slimy, and I don't like it. I also mentioned that this is exactly the direction that I'm trying to go. So, for example, I am currently recording an astrology foundations course. And so then at the end of that foundations course, you're going to be able to buy that shit on my website. I'm not going to continue to teach that course is the idea. I actually think that I'm probably going to. But the idea is that I will have a product that you can then just buy. All you have to do is pay me and I don't have to work anymore. All you got to do is pay me and I get paid, right? Sure. What I want is that rent seeking passive income?
Is is that actually the same? So let's take um, access control, and let's use actual rent for a second,
Okay.
like a house you can rent as
Sure.
a counter example. So I'm the landlord.
Hmm.
I bought this thing.
Hmm.
Maybe I fixed it up a bit one time,
Hmm.
maybe
Right.
not.
Uh-huh.
And but you can't live here unless you pay me what I
Hmm.
say you have to pay me to live
Hmm.
here. And certainly my input into what happens past that is minimal, right? Like
Hmm.
the goal is for that to be relatively passive income, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
To me, that differs a little bit from, or significantly actually, from the creation of uh, continually flourishing value. So I'm going to take two examples as a comparison. So one, I planted my strawberries in my garden 4 years ago. I
Hmm.
do jack shit for these strawberries except water them occasionally. It is a very
Hmm.
passive process. I don't even weed. I'm a really bad gardener. We get so many strawberries at this point just by living in relation with strawberries, making sure they get enough water, but that's pretty much it.
Hmm.
Um, that we have an overabundance of strawberries. We literally have to give them away
Amazing.
because
That is.
we can't even save enough. You know,
Uh-huh.
that's different to me than rent seeking because there's a relationship of mutually continual flourishing. But I'm in a sort of Taoist relationship with this where I'm wu-weiing that shit real hard, right?
Sure.
Which is my favorite thing I've said today, wu-weiing real hard. Um, Similarly, when what you're doing is you're providing something that you know has value, or at least you believe has value, right?
Hmm.
You offer it to people, and the people encountering it have the only limit to their access to it is a fairly nominal fee, right?
Hmm.
It, you know, and but you aren't using power to control in the same way. You're offering something and saying, hey, you can relate with this, right?
Hmm.
And there will come a point where people maybe don't relate to it, and you're going to be like, oh, I need to update that course. It's been 3 years, for this
Hmm.
thing. But you're offering a mutual exchange of value that is meant to create mutual flourishing. Like it's meant to create relationship. Whereas the rent seeking, like in the rent relationship, in the way we typically think of landlords, that's the end of the flourishing. I mean, yes, you do get a house, you do get a need fulfilled. There's an
Hmm.
exchange of value there for sure. But that's really that's intended to be the end of the relationship. I have a buddy who works as a landlord, right? He also is a teacher, but his side hustle is being a landlord.
Hmm.
He does not make nearly as much from his side hustle as he could
Hmm.
because he doesn't raise the rents whenever he can.
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
plays the landlord game very badly.
Hmm. Hmm.
However, he makes enough money from this side hustle to take his family to Florence,
Hmm.
and he has a lot of people who think of him as a really nice guy.
Hmm.
And he's and were things to turn apocalyptically bad, he's in a really good spot. Do you know what I mean? Like he has money. He's got his emergency fund is fine. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
so that may be a case where that relationship kind of changes a little bit because it branches into new relational connections, right? If you do it that way. But in the
Hmm.
classic landlord sense, I don't feel there's a branching into relationality.
Hmm.
And I think there's something about the passive. So like passive income is not bad, right? In the sense that like if we work with systems in the right ways, it should at least be easy income, wu wei income,
Hmm.
right? Um, and the question is like, does the other version, rent seeking, which is a kind of passive income, require violence and does have higher returns in the immediate sense, but comes with some other costs?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So I think one of the hangups I'm having here is around the same thing that we were talking about before, which is intellectual property.
Yep.
So intellectual property is the
Yes.
ownership of an idea
Yes. Yes. Yes.
versus housing or real property, right? Which is the ownership of houses and land. And so the property bit here is the same. And so there comes a question of, is it the same thing?
This is really exciting because we are now talking about Napster
Yeah, piracy.
piracy. Because the argument from those of us who downloaded millions of songs illegally,
Sure.
of which I don't, statute of limitations is out. We all did it. Leave me alone, people.
Yeah.
That computer's dead. Anyway, I pay for Spotify like a good fascist. The,
Listen, man,
the
I have so much beef with Spotify
I know,
from an artist
I know,
perspective, but from a user perspective, this shit is amazing. You mean
it's
I'm gonna
amazing
pay $11 a month for all the music?
for all the music ever and most of the
All of it?
podcasts and a bunch of audiobooks. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is ridiculous. This is an amazing price
It's an
that
amazing
I
price.
that even though I'm an artist on Spotify who makes I think in total off Spotify I've made $7.
Right.
Like and you know, and Can't Help Myself by itself took like 7,000 to make or something like this.
Right.
You know what I mean? A
Right.
ridiculous sum of money. But
Yeah.
so but as a user, like
Right.
and not only as a user but also as a student, right? I think that
Right.
study should be
Yes.
free, and
I do too.
all of this, like
It's hard
I'm
to argue with.
hard pressed to be mad about this,
Right. And so the
even
Napster,
on the understanding that Spotify CEO and whatever is making all millions of dollars, whatever, like even understanding that $11 a month for all of the music,
right.
this is a
Right.
great deal.
And exposure, honestly, exposure to people I would never have found. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I follow a bunch of artists that like are not regional to me, not anything close to the music I would have
Yeah,
exposed
shout out
to.
to the release radar. That shit is great.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I find a ton of great stuff. So the Napster argument was always it's the corporations that make the money on the intellectual property. The musicians make the money touring.
Right.
If you
Yes,
want
yes,
to
yes.
support the musician, go to the show,
Sure. Right. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's problems with that.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But maybe there is something to that core idea of like when we're talking about intellectual property, maybe we shouldn't be able to be like, no, I'm gonna sue, I'm gonna be the Rolling Stones and fucking sue you for sampling my song, you know,
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying like my reputation, my cred, my people knowing who I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do that over there. I don't need intellectual property. Make me fucking famous as shit. Go for it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna make my
this is
money on
Parliament and
performance.
Warner Brothers.
Yes.
Right? Because like
Yeah. Tell that story a little more. Yeah. Yeah.
well, so Parliament Funkadelic is my favorite funk band. We Want the Funk is their mega hit, but
Yeah.
they got a whole bunch of super dope shit that's not that song. And the funk and ZamboniFunk, Z Funk is directly downstream from P Funk. So they had a deal with Warner Brothers at the time, and so most of the Parliament and Funkadelic music came out on Warner Brothers or some affiliate. And rappers who are so like the G Funk era that came immediately
Right.
after P Funk, so gangsters love Parliament. Gangsters fucking love Parliament. Gangsters have great taste in music, and one of the best things I ever did. I used to live in Brooklyn across from the Trap. It was very clear what was going on. You know what I mean? Like what no secrets about what was
Yeah.
happening out here. But they used to like chill out outside the house and just like open the door to the car and blast tunes all day. And I would just sit under the window with Shazam and like make a super dope playlist just based on whatever they were. Gangsters have great taste in music, but so the gangsters on the corner would listen to Parliament Funkadelic all the time, and so then that got incorporated into the new generation of music. And so Parliament songs got sampled and sampled and sampled and sampled and sampled. And so Warner Brothers had to put a stop to that. Warner Brothers was like, why are y'all making all this money and we're not making any money? Whereas George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic was like, fuck yeah, that's right. That's me on that record. That's right. You gonna hear this all the time. And there's a kind of legacy. We all become immortal because Dr. Dre is going to use this shit, and the Far Side and whoever else, you know what I mean? Like a gang of people are going to continue to sample this shit. So George Clinton, the artist, is on the side of sampling, whereas the owners of the record are not on the side of sampling. So that's that's the point you were making, right?
Yeah, that's the point I was getting on there. And so, are you an owner or are you an artist? Right, is a question. And I think we confuse that a lot. And I actually think that visual art has a lot to do with why we confuse the fuck out of this. That like the whole fucked upness of the art market when it comes to paintings and things created a lot of the intellectual property issues that are really confusing. Publishing houses also did this because there was a long period where early novel and as a poet, even in like the late 19th century, early 20th century, you made your money again by concerts, by readings, by speaking events, by going around. You didn't see much on the royalty side of things, right? And it's when people kind of post World War II or in the 30s also, people started to be like, well, I own this story and I have this and this is how I make my money off the royalties. This kind of stuff. I don't engage with the public. I just live in my cabin and I guess jerk off a lot, whatever. Like that's a different experience than what it was to be honestly almost for the entire time of being a poet in the West, right? Where like you were required to go and fucking perform at parties and hopefully the emperor threw you some shit,
Sure.
But like it's you wanted the cred, the reputation, the immortality, which does come with money.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like
ideally,
poets are always talking about money. Catullus is writing about how much he needs more money and how he spent it all on books and hookers, basically. And but like
it's a slippery slope. You know,
slippery slope every time. The trap is. You
get a little taste and even.
But
what have I done?
There's and respect to all the sex workers who were helping the poets out. Like, listen, it's a tight thing.
We appreciate y'all.
It's just another art. But the ownership concept, right? You've foreshadowed this very nicely with our little like, is it coincidental that the Atlantic slave trade is coming out of this same time period? Because we're going to talk for a second about Thomas Jefferson. Because Thomas Jefferson's idea of how to be the Renaissance man, the thinker, the prince, right, was to say, I get a lot of slaves who do a lot of work for me, and I'll have time to sit around the plantation and write books and do this because I'm an owner who has the time to do this other stuff. I'm built off this other labor, right? And that's a fundamental concept to how the almighty dollar was founded, right? Like this is built into that system. So the question for piracy to me, how do we disrupt this, is like, how do we get paid without being owners? Because, I don't think that's really what we want. But we do have to sit and ask the question. And sometimes I think that is going to look like gaming the system, and sometimes I think it's going to look like changing the system. But when people say, no, I don't want to be paid, I don't wish to succeed, I don't want to be a sellout. I'm like, no, you're falling for the system at that point. Right.
Okay. So this makes me think, so how do I get paid without ownership is what you just said, right?
Yeah.
And so this makes me think again about the difference between Earth times and air times, right? We're moving now from Earth into air. And so this makes me think about flow dynamics, right? It's not that Earth doesn't flow, but it at a 200-year time frame, it kind of doesn't. Um, Whereas airflow is a thing, and not only does it flow, but it's invisible, detectable but
Right.
invisible. So
Right.
this is I don't I just had this thought, so it's not fleshed out at all, but it makes me think about if we can use a flow model of transaction and market exchange that doesn't rest on I own the thing. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what it would rest on. Maybe it doesn't rest because it's air, and so there's a
Right.
it's always in flux. It's continuously dynamic. And if it's continuously dynamic, are you like always close to ruin? Potentially.
Maybe.
But what if we were to think about a model of flow rather than ownership? What would that even mean?
So this is the point where I remind everybody I wrote a thesis on Anglo-Saxon kingship and talked about money in it a lot. Money is meant to flow. The king is meant to
Right.
distribute money. He's not meant to hold it.
This is
Holding is
the
when you
point
get the
I was hoping you were
dragons.
going to make.
Yeah. It's not hard to push this button with me. Um, and and the same words that were used for worm and dragon and everything else were used to describe kings who hoarded money. Dragon
Mm,
hoards, right?
mm, mm,
A king, a good king, distributes and flows. He's the love giver. He's the loaf giver, the bread giver. Like this is the ring giver, right? He's just meant to keep
mm,
it moving. And so I think that this is something about the way that real wealth functions. You have hoards, which are negative in the system as a whole, and you have flows and
mhm,
current
mhm,
that is important to how we get more flourishing, more wealth, more for everybody, right?
mhm,
Because I think one of the other objections here is I got to get paid is different than we got to get paid.
mm.
Pirate ships are crews. The money is
Okay.
actually
Okay.
split among everybody.
Sure.
um, you got a share of what's going on. And the only people who got extra shares were either the wounded, because they weren't going to get to do another thing, or the people who took more risk. So the
Mhm,
captain,
mhm,
some of the other folks on there, they got a little bit higher share. Not a lot, but a little
mhm,
higher share because they took more risks,
mhm,
right? But the idea is that this, whatever we capture, it's going to flow to all of us. And then we're all going to go and we're going to spread it back to the people who also create flow experiences. And like, in all honesty, you know, sex work is an interesting thing here because no one owns that. Yes, the person is responsible for their own body, that kind of
mhm,
stuff. But that's the wrong way to look at it. The experience is what's being created,
mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
And
mhm,
there's a flow exchange between the two parties that is like that. I think similarly when you engage with art, there's a flow exchange. If you are even engaging at the farmers market, right?
mhm,
Like, yes, the person has brought the tomatoes, these delicious
mhm,
tomatoes to the farmers market. They don't really own the tomatoes. Whether what they're
mhm.
selling you, because those tomatoes are going to go bad in like 3 days. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
but they're selling you the experience. The exchange is for the experience of these tomatoes. They put time in to get it. They're offering it to you. You're going to
Mhm,
give them something to say, hey, keep doing this. Keep
mhm.
making this for me. Keep doing this, which is different than like I own the patent to this machine and you have to pay me every time you use it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like or even the idea of I'm really running around right now. You're gonna have to stop me in a second. But like the idea of cattle grazing, right? You need communal space to graze cattle. It's too big to put on your one farm. You can't be like,
Sure.
I own the grazing land. You're like, it's too big. It doesn't work, right?
Uh-huh.
You have to work it out together to have a common space in order to do this kind of thing. And so who really owns the land that the cattle graze on? Well, it should be nobody or everybody,
Partially
you know,
because land should not be owned.
100%. but also even in that like that ownership model of things, it's impractical for someone
Sure.
to have to own all this land, even though people have tried. But you know, so my point is that like we have a lot of good. Like to me, I think that wealth and money actually wants to be part of flow, right? The
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's the real game is the flow.
Sure, right, right. And this is one of the reasons why I frequently think about money magic as Mercury magic rather
Right,
than like Jupiter magic. You
right.
know, Jupiter wants to make things bigger, and like you think of like Sky Daddy and all this kind of thing, and
Yeah,
like that's cute. But Mercury is the one that like distributes, that goes back and forth, that exchanges, and there's so it's the constant in and out and around and the like
hmm
back and forth nature of Mercury. So like I don't need to feel no type of way about spending money, about money going out because there is flow, and so there's
right,
it's coming back, it's gonna come in on the other side, and like all of this like it's that consistent dynamism
right.
is crucial if you ever want to spend money. And
No,
so
yeah.
Mercury Magic is like the move there.
And you know, I think there's probably multiple magics here. I think there's probably different ways to get to flourishing. Do you know what I mean? But like
Oh yeah, for
we're
sure,
we're
for sure.
specifically talking about
Yeah, you could
these
do Saturn Magic
arts.
and get rich, but
Totally, yeah. But we're talking about these arts magics. You know what I mean in a way of like how do we get paid in these kind of experiential exchanges where we don't,
sure.
you know. I mean, I guess someone could pay me to be their house poet and I could live in the backyard. You know what I mean? I could,
Yeah,
something, you
be kept.
yeah, exactly. You could be kept, right? Some of those Renaissance boys were kept in a way that's not so great. But the that made it sound even worse than it was. I don't know why I said it like that. But the um but again, that's sort of like control of access again, right? So
Yeah,
the so yeah, so but I guess I'm coming back to the idea too that it isn't wrong to want to get paid. It is not wrong to be want to be a part of this
sure,
community of flow, right? In fact, it's actually really fucked up to say you should do that
sure.
for free because you love it. You shouldn't be a part. You should not be a part of the flourishing because you're doing
Uh,
something you love, and that's all you
uh-huh.
should get from that flourishing, right? Like
Right. Uh-huh.
that's fucked
Uh-huh.
up, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so the first way that I ever was able to conceive of money was as a gatekeeping mechanism,
Sure.
to keep people who had not done enough work or who had not demonstrated enough value
Right.
to from whatever from food and housing
Mhm.
and delights of the flesh. And so I yeah it the idea of like being kept out of that because you aren't uh, working hard enough, right? So by
Right.
working, where it means like doing things that you don't like.
Right.
So that
Selling your
and
labor.
yeah, 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 exactly. And I always like resisted that. I was always like, man, fuck that. I don't
Yeah.
like burn it down, you know?
Yeah. Particularly because, like, I don't think Warren Buffett is living that way either. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. And I don't think I would want his life, you know?
no.
So,
Yeah.
you know, like, yeah, like I like cooking hookers as much as the next guy, but like, I don't think that, yeah, I don't
Well,
think I want Warren Buffett's life.
you know, something else this is making me think of too is I think it's hard for us to realize how much of this limitation mindset we actually live in. Um,
Sure.
I've been having some conversations with family folks about monotheism and just
Hmm.
like this idea that there is one way to live, there is one way to think, there is one way to do things. You know,
Hmm.
there's only one reality, there's only one real, you know, and how
Oh
this it's such a toxic concept Um, and it really causes a ton of downstream effects that are stupid. Um, and one of the things I've thought with a lot is like the difference between, you know, monogamy and compulsory monogamy, right? Like
Sure.
you want to be with one person all the time, you choose that together, that's totally fine. But if the society compels you in that way,
Hmm.
that is rooted in an ownership scarcity model of thinking that is restricted,
Hmm.
as opposed to, and again, this is not a case that like all polyamorous conversations are the more moral high ground or any of this kind of shit. But what I'm saying is when you have options open, you have flow possibility, right?
Hmm.
You're opening up more things and it's a less restrictive setup. If you're not doing it right, if you still aren't having good conversations with people, do you know what I mean? Like there's still there's
Hmm.
community obligation that's present,
Hmm.
just as there
Hmm.
is in, I think, voluntary monogamy, where people make
Sure.
commitments and they, you know, there's good stuff there, right? It's the
Hmm.
compulsory nature that's the problem. In the same way that like you have to own a house is a really strange compulsory thing,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
You know, if you want total independence in your life, well, you must own your house. That's not
Right.
how the Haudenosaunee did it, you know,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure. Right. Yeah. Once you get to that point, then you can unthink all of the things. I I do want to go down the like sexuality
I thought you
and
might.
relationship
I thought you might.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ready to do that right now.
Oh,
We've already been talking for 2 hours. I think it's probably a good time to wrap
probably
this
time to
one.
stop.
Yeah, but I do want to come back to this because
Yes.
I because it's an area that needs exploration. And
Yeah.
I also think that we disagree in some spots that are going to be fruitful
Yeah.
and exciting to talk about. So I
Totally.
can't wait to have this conversation. But I can wait to have this conversation because because I am gonna have to go back and edit the shit and like do the closed captioning and all that. And like
Yeah.
I
No.
this is
No.
enough.
It's too long. It's too long.
Yeah, 2 hours is too much
Yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
all the for subtitling.
But do you feel
Hmm.
that you're in a position to make some new mistakes after the conversation today? Like, did we open some
Hmm.
doors?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so this feeling around a flow model is not. This is not the first time that I've thought about it
Mhm.
in this way, but I do. I think that there are new places to think into
Right.
based on that kind of relationship, and then also the idea of like property ownership and what
Yeah.
that is exactly. This has been helpful to me in that I feel like there are some open roads in this way.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
and always never answers, but always lines of inquiry, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like there are new directions for me to think into, and that's all I ever want.
Yeah. I got really excited actually in this too. People should probably be able to tell, but I found this really exciting in that it it's very exciting to explore the ways that piracy works here. It's very and to dig into that, like, and to start think. I honestly, I was really excited to think with Napster again, and like literal music piracy and the amount of theft that went on in that time period, and how it did actually bring this up, right, in a
Sure.
way that I think the conversation has actually shifted since then. And there was a
Well,
lot of
that was
like,
also the first Saturn Pluto conjunction in an air sign, or
oh,
Saturn
that's
Jupiter
interesting.
rather, Saturn Jupiter conjunction in an air sign, which Pluto was there also in
Sure.
Libra, but that like there was a or no, not in 2000, but let's see, 2000 we're back to 1980 was the Saturn Jupiter in Libra, and then 2000 was back in Taurus. So actually, I'm wilding. Never mind.
It's
Don't listen
okay
to me.
because because as people who watch this will see, anytime Zamboni starts doing the astro math in his head, I'm just delighted. I'm just like, I literally could not remember what day it was when I woke up this morning. And like, you're over here being like, in 1980, the sun was here. And I'm like, I don't, or Neptune's over here. I'm like, I don't know. I can't
I've
even
seen a
remember
lot of
what.
charts.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Oh man. All right. Well, if we're
No,
calling it a night,
yeah.
you are having a class that sounds like it's going to be for sale. People could actually
Hmm.
buy this thing from you, even though this class is getting to the end. How is
Yeah,
that
the
going to work?
fundamentals of astrology. Yeah. It'll be available on my website, ZamboniFunk.com. If you are interested in getting into the last couple of weeks, then you can always DM me and get the old recordings that we have so far and participate live. If you want to be able to ask questions and stuff like that, you won't be able to do that with the recorded
Yeah.
sessions. So that might be something that is valuable. So all that is going to be well. So if you want to be involved in that, then you got to
Yeah.
DM me. But the course itself will be available on ZamboniFunk.com, same place where you can get readings and all this kind of thing. But you were talking about having written some poems, some magical poems that
I
you
have.
didn't necessarily that
Yes.
you collaborated on. What you
I
want to tell us about
did.
A
I
Wheel of
did.
Small Gods over here?
A Wheel of Small Gods is a book of magical poems dedicated to the decans and intentionally put together for healing purposes. So the goal is to introduce you to these spirits and which have long been used for healing in since Egypt, the long-standing tradition, and for you to have to facilitate your engagement with them. That's the purpose of these poems. They are personal poems. They're not like the Orphic hymns. They're written in my voice and they're based in my experiences, but they're meant to be an invitation to the spirit in each case. And there's also some amazing art by Brennan Reese that I don't talk about enough. It's not just poetry; it's facing illustrations. There are these beautiful woodcuts that he did. And you can find links to this on my website, wilkinsbryan.com, or you can check it out at Revelor Press, which I feel like I should shout out more on this show because they're an amazing press who actually pays their artists and pays their authors and produces really excellent work in both magic and astrology and alchemy and everything else. And Jen's art is great. So,
Mm.
people should go check out Revelor, and you can pick it up there or anywhere else. But it's I hope you enjoy it. I still get notes from people every now and again who just found it, right? And it's really
Mm.
exciting to see people engaging with it. And yeah, if you read the book and you want to ask me a question, hit me up on Instagram or wherever else you can find me, and or on the website. And I'm happy to have a chat with you about it. So
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
yeah,
And that's wilkinsbryan.com, the same place where you could get a geomancy reading,
it
right?
is the same place you can get a reading and get my attention in lots of ways. And uh, I was actually going to throw some geomantic figures at you a little bit later, but we'll save them for the sexuality conversation because they're always in. Geomancy is the sexiest of the divining arts. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And but geomancy is, of course, a chance. It's astrology's little sister. It's a chance to look at how the shadows fall on the earth rather than to look up at the stars. And it's real practical and real fun. So yeah, happy to do a reading at any time. Love it.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time. I highly recommend it. I'd be having hella fun when we do those. And
Yeah.
you've also done readings for me out of your Wheel of Small Gods deck.
Yes.
And that is real good. So I don't know if you're doing those kind of readings publicly, but I do know that
They are on the site as well.
They are on
Yeah.
the site as well. Hell yeah, hell yeah.
So you
Highly
can get
recommend
You
that.
can get a deckhand reading for me. Yep.
My foot did get better.
Yes.
So shout out to that. I want
Shout
the
out
people
to
to know
the spirits.
that
Yeah.
did happen. In fact,
That's true.
and it was as a result of your intercession and all that. So appreciate that big
the
time.
spirits.
All the folks should go out and check out wilkinsbryan.com. You can also find astrology readings and music and all the rest at ZamboniFunk.com. Appreciate all y'all for being here. Thank you so much. Brian, thank you so much for being here with me another time. Appreciate everybody.
Thank you, Zamboni. Good night, everybody. Be well.
Peace and blessings, family.